Hello, listeners. Welcome to Crack the Wellness Code podcast, a space where we discuss all things health and wellness. This podcast aims to educate, inspire, empower, and impact, thereby leaving you feeling uplifted. Happy listening.
What I'm going to talk about is, I promise it's not a diet talk. It's not a nutrition talk. It's not a weight loss talk. It's not even a talk about how to prevent yourself from developing heart disease. What I'm trying to develop here is a framework, and I am grateful that you're going to let me throw this out and see how people react to it. You're among the very first people to hear this set of ideas that I've been working on for quite a while now. And it's a framework for what I call thinking about your own health. Thinking because I believe that some of the most powerful intelligence you can develop about your health choices will come from your own thoughts and thinking about your own health, because I really want to emphasize the ownership of your health data. And the ownership of your health data should be yours, and we should recognize its value. So, as I said, I promise it's not a diet talk, but let's just take a question, a theoretical example. Let's assume for a moment that you are, say, a human being, and a human being who needs to eat food. And you may be aware that there are different kinds of food, and that some of them may have potentially different impacts upon your body, your metabolism, your health, your future health risks. And so you may have thought at some point, how am I going to decide what I should eat? So I dreamt up of a number of different things that I might about, maybe vision about how am I going to eat, what kind of diet am I going to eat. And for sure, you all know now, there are a lot of people with loudly voiced opinions. They're influencers. They're speaking with great certainty about what you should eat. So perhaps you should listen to one of them. Perhaps you should pick one and go with it. You might also ask your doctor, but this is a talk for another day. The healthcare system is not entirely set up to spend a lot of time with each patient, coaching them through nuanced decisions like their dietary choices. And so in the limited time that most people have with their doctors, there's really not enough time to do dietary work. Now, if you went to the library and holed up in there for a year and really educated yourself and read all the about the zones and the epidemiology and the longitudinal data and the guidelines of every organization with a well-developed opinion about diet, you could certainly come up with a decision. It would probably be something like the Mediterranean diet, and maybe that helps you. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's a good choice for you. I think an even better choice might be to listen to your grandmother. And when I say your grandmother, I'm talking about someone who, A, has some accumulated wisdom, and B, and importantly, is someone who loves you, someone who deeply cares for you in a very generous, altruistic way and has your best interests at heart. And so if you're fortunate enough to have such a person who knows you, who cares about you, and who is wise, then that person may, in fact, be a good source of decisions about your own health. But the framework that I've developed here for thinking about your own health, it goes beyond that. And that is to accept that these people who give you great certainty about what your diet should be, perhaps shouldn't be so certain. That we should accept that there really is uncertainty in this question, and that I am going to make a choice for myself. And in order to figure out a prudent path for myself, I'd like to have some guardrails, perhaps based around the evidence, based around the scientific literature, so that I know that this extreme is dangerous, this extreme is dangerous. I'm going to stay here. But I'm going to base my choice on my goals, my culture, my health data. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to keep a notebook. I'm going to be a scientist for myself, and I'm going to come up with, I think, the best decision of what I'm going to eat for me. Now, again, if I turn to the influencers, here are a couple of doctors. These are real doctors. These are our colleagues. This is a cardiologist, a preventive cardiologist, who very convincingly says that you should be a vegan, that you should eat a vegan diet, and that it is the healthiest way for you to live. And yet, on the other hand, here is another doctor with the same degrees, the same legitimacy and expertise, who says that beef is a health food, and that if you are that if you disagree with him, you are he calls you a soy boy. You're something less than. So there are plenty of influencers with great certainty. Now, I'm going to give the cardiologist the edge in this debate, because at least she recognizes that there's a big difference between correlation and causation. And so just because we have observed a correlation in our scientific observations does not mean that we have understood the truth of what is going on in the biochemical mechanisms that underlie the relationship between diet and the development of disease. On the other hand, this guy who says that beef is a health food, truth is, he looks like a Marvel superhero. He looks pretty good, doesn't he? And actually, he holds some age group world records in some strength competitions. And so, maybe he's got something too. So this doesn't really resolve the question for me of what is the truth? What is the truth about what to eat? Now, in the 1950s, there was a cartoon called Pogo. And Pogo was a set of critters who lived in the Okefenokee swamp and said wise things to each other. And along came this fox, this sly fox, Sam, who made the comment that one man's truth is another man's cold broccoli. And I've held that in the back of my mind for the last 50 years. Just to say that just because someone presents you a tasty opinion does not make it the truth. Now, you might say you're going to listen to an expert, and for sure, in many of the last decades, I have held myself out as something of an expert, at least in my area of cardiovascular disease and interventional cardiology. And I've been around the world, and I've lectured, and I've done research, and I've seen things. But honestly, that's not why I think I should have your credibility and your trust as I offer you some recommendations about how you're going to make these choices and live your life. In fact, instead, it's really because this is what I do nowadays. And these are some of the fastest 60 to 70-year-old men in America. This was a few months ago at a big professional track meet, the Los Angeles Grand Prix at UCLA, and we gave what is called a masters exhibition of the old men. Let the old men go out and run one. So most of us here in this group are in our 60s. This fellow in red, though, had just turned 70. And as it turns out, he beat us all. And on that day, he set a new age group world record for the 100-meter dash. This Damian Leake, he ran 12.59 seconds for the 100, and we all were a step or two behind him. And so why should this give me any credibility? Okay, so I'm an old guy who can run pretty fast. And it's because we didn't just get to run very fast for nothing. It's because the guys who do this have really very, very consciously paid attention to their health for many, many years to get to the position where they could do what they're doing. And despite that, and in very much in contradistinction to what many influencers would like you to believe when they tell you that, oh, you don't need to age, that if you take this supplement, you won't age, or you do this therapy, you're not going to age. The truth is, from where we sit as masters athletes, looking at, here's the 100-meter world record by age group. We run in five-year age groups, 35 to 39 and 40 to 44 and so on. It's inexorable. We are aging. We get slower. And I need to adjust this slide because here, as I said, my friend Damien just ran a 12:59. So we got to drop that age group world record. But we are going to age. And despite the truth and the inevitability of our aging, I think that we can do our very best by thinking about our health and taking care of our health. And so what do we do? Well, these are my friends. We train together. We work out together. We race together. We compete together. But we also talk together about what are we doing? What are we eating? What are our problems? Why does our hamstring hurt? Why have we slowed down this month? What are we doing wrong? What can we do better? And because it's a very quantitative sport, it's a very data-driven sport. And so I'm advocating that not only in your exercise and your athletic endeavors, but also in your basic self-care, that you can gain more intelligence and make better decisions by being a quantitative thinker. Now, I don't have a grandmother anymore, but if I did, I would hope it would be someone like Flo Myler here. This is another friend of ours, and she is 89 years old. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. She is 89 years old, and she runs the hurdles. She pole vaults. She does the triple jump. She holds 18 age group world records for athletics. And so I definitely want to know what she's eating. And I asked her advice. It wasn't so dramatic. She said, well, I eat a turkey sandwich and some banana bread, and I have a protein shake. And really the only thing that I could really grab there is that she probably does eat a little more protein than the average 89-year-old. And I think you can see that that's why her muscle mass, and just look at her legs, this is not what most 89-year-old legs look like. So return to Pogo. Sam the Fox comes along and he says to Pogo Possum, here's your chance to make a fortune. I've invented a cure-all and I've got 10,000 bottles and we're going to sell it and we're going to make a fortune. But the cure-all that Sam had bottled was just swamp water. And I urge you, at any time you encounter someone who's telling you about a cure-all or a supplement or a therapy that's too good to be true, take it with a lot of caution. It's probably swamp water. So because I spent my 10,000 hours in here in the cardiac catheterization lab looking inside thousands and thousands of hearts, I do have some idea about what it is that over a lifetime tends to accumulate and cause coronary artery disease or heart failure or valvular heart disease or the other manifestations of cardiovascular disease that we fear. But rather than go so deeply into the science of all of those diseases, I think that for most of us, we can start and make a tremendous amount of progress by starting here, by getting some exercise. And honestly, I don't recommend that anyone go out and try for the first time tomorrow to run this fast. You'll probably pull a hamstring. It takes a good year or so of building up general fitness before you, in your later adult years, you can try sprinting at 100%. But building up to that, and of course, credits to the fellow who stacked this shelf so beautifully with all of these cakes and buns and pies. It's very artistic, but it's not good for any of us. None of us should be eating that, almost never, ever. So if I was going to be quantitative and I was going to think about how to make my own best health decisions, I would want to keep a notebook. I would want to keep a scientific laboratory book. And these are a few of the things that I'm going to close with that I might want to put into my notebook. I'd want to think about what are the problems that I have with my own health and what are the risks, particularly based on my genetics and family history, that I need to be particularly concerned about. Am I more concerned about cardiovascular disease, or am I more concerned about osteoporosis, or am I more concerned about cancer? And depending on what those may really influence what is the ideal diet for me or for you or for anyone who's going through this process. And for any of us, then, the very simplest data that you can record in that notebook might be the basic data of what size is your waist? How much do you weigh? Keep an eye on that. Keep track of that over 10 years. And by gosh, you've really learned something. If you have 10 years worth of data, you're going to know, when I eat this way, I lose weight. When I eat that way, I gain weight. When I do this, I'm healthier. When I do that, I'm not. And then if you go ahead and add some metabolic parameters like your hemoglobin A1C, a marker of your blood glucose, or your lipids, your cholesterol and triglycerides, and you track those over a few years and in concert with your eating patterns, well, then you can really begin to dial in what is the optimal diet for you. Now, if you wanted to go another level beyond that, as we do as competitive masters athletes, I might start thinking about recording in my notebook what's my training log, what are my times like, what is my strength, how much am I lifting, what's my VO2 max, my maximal cardiovascular fitness. And all of those are going to give me intelligence as I am able to correlate them with the diets, with the drugs, with all the things that I'm doing to take care of myself. And at the very next level, the most extreme, as you can put on a wearable device and you can monitor your sleep and you can do 1 million blood tests and you can do body composition testing. And all of those are interesting and perhaps even useful, but these levels of data and data about that, thinking about your own health like a scientist, like a good engineer, trying to solve your problem and identify your optimal self-care is the best way for you to answer that question that I posed at the outset. What am I going to eat? Or any of the other kinds of questions that you might encounter in your day-to-day life about your health.
That wraps up today's edition of Crack the Wellness Code podcast. If you want to know more about this episode and many such archive treasures, then make sure you download our CWC Kushi app, available both in app and Play Store. Thank you for listening.